I'm Caleb Harris, and this time I'm batching out these pizza pills for a big craft show I have. If you think these are pretty cool and you're enjoying things so far, go ahead and hit that like button. Now stick with me and I'll show you how you can make this too.
I found a local place that sells hardwood offcuts for millwork runs pretty inexpensively, so I picked up some cherry strips to batch out some more pizza pills. These were 12-foot lengths, so the first thing I did was cut it down to a reasonable size on my miter saw station, and I milled two sides of my jointer. On square pieces like this, I like to mark which corner is machine square so I don't lose track of it. Then I ran it through the planer to bring it down to a true square before cutting to the length I need. I'll be laminating some maple and purple heart to the cherry, so I'll go ahead and cut those to size as well.
I changed my mind. I like this layout better. I laid out the ones with the walnut and then decided to see what the purple heart looked like, and I like this better, so I'm gonna go with it. I did almost make a really big mistake though. When I made pizza pills last time, I resawed my maple and cherry and then glued the thin boards together, and that was a real pain. So this time, I thought I would glue everything together and then resaw it. But it just hit me that this is 14 inches, this is 16 inches, and my bandsaw only resaws 12. So if I glued these up, I wouldn't be able to resaw them. So what I'm gonna do is just pull off the maple and glue these up and then resaw the maple, cherry, purple heart, and then glue them back together. So I'll have some thin boards I'll have to do a glue up on, but at least it won't be, 7 thin boards I have to glue up. All right, it's dry and I'm almost ready to start resawing my thin pieces off. Before I can do that, I need to run this through the jointer to make a flat edge. That way I can run it through my planer and bring this down to even thickness and be flat on both sides.
Start resawing by making cuts on the table saw. This reduces the depth of the cut the bandsaw has to make and is the only way that I found so far to beat blade drift on the bandsaw. Now because the maple sides are much narrower, I can completely rip them on the table saw. My buddy Andrew also does a lot of woodwork, and he was nice enough to let me come over and use his thickness sander, which saves a whole lot of time on sanding. But you could easily clean these up using light passes on a planer, any hand sander, hand planes, or just hand sanding. Now I just need to finish gluing everything together. On thin pieces like this, I like to use tape to help keep everything aligned, but they were still big enough I could put them in clamps. But light clamping pressure is all you need on something like this, because too much pressure and it's really easy to bend these thin boards. After the glue dried, it was time to lay out my design. Now there really isn't a science or formula to this. I just use different tools and shapes until I come up with something I think is pleasing. Then rough cut it on the bandsaw and sand it to size on the oscillating sander. At this point, it's really just about the finishing touches. I put a hole in the handle so the pill can be hung up if someone wants to store it that way, and I round over all the edges with the 1/8 inch roundover bit in my trim router. I added the bevel using my random orbit sander, but you could use a belt sander, rasps, files, hand planes, almost anything. Then I worked through the grits up to 150, and then I wet the wood to remove most of the sanding dust and raise the grain before finishing at 220 grit. I just used mineral oil to finish this. I didn't want any kind of film finish because it's made to have a hot, steamy pizza on it, and people might cut the pizza on it, so I don't want any film finish that might flake off. but the mineral oil is enough to bring out the color and also prevent the wood from getting saturated with any oil or grease from the pizza, so long as it gets reapplied occasionally.
Earlier I mentioned that I'm making these for a big craft show I have coming up. I also made some clipboards, and I'll leave a link to that video in case you missed it. You'll want to subscribe because after the craft show I'm going to do an update where I talk about how much time it took me to get ready, my expenses, how I price things, as well as my profit. Thank you for watching.